Welcome, brave listeners, to Stories, Fables, Ghostly Tales, the only podcast where doors should never be opened, children should never be trusted with crayons, and your walls are probably whispering to you right now. Today's tale may involve blood, memory holes, possessed kids, or all of the above. So grab your tea, lock your doors, and just as a suggestion, don't look too closely at the drawing your niece made last week. Yeah, that one, with the teeth and the eyes and the eesh. I'm your host, the Tale Teller, here to remind you, if a job pays too well and comes with no background check, you're not the employee. They're just restocking inventory. Now, let's begin. Your tale today is Crayon Marks on the Wall, Blood Under the Floor. Enjoy. Welcome to Little Leaves. It started with a Craigslist ad, $18 per hour, night shift daycare assistant, no experience needed. Cash daily, no background check. I clicked the listing and read it again. Night shift daycare. That should have set off alarms right away. But I was 3 days behind on rent, had $5 in my checking account, and a stomach that hadn't known real food in over a week. I'd have cleaned up crime scenes if they'd paid half that much. The address pinged on Google Maps, but all the reviews were a decade old. Most were one-star complaints about mold and mysterious illness. Some mentioned police tape. One said a kid was never the same after being left there overnight. When I got there, it didn't look abandoned. The building was brick, low to the ground, shaped like a U with a small playground in the middle. I expected peeling paint and rusted swings, but everything looked fresh, almost too clean. The jungle gym had new plastic bolts. The playhouse in the corner had no dust, no webs, like someone came through and pressure washed the last decade away. The sign above the door still read Little Leaves Learning Center. The paint was new, but the letters beneath it had the faint discoloration of being burned by time, like they'd been baked into the wall long before being repainted. The air reeked of disinfectant and something faintly metallic beneath it, like bleach covering up meat. I met the supervisor in the lobby. Her name might have been Karen or Shannon. I honestly don't think she told me. She just appeared from one of the side halls and stared like she'd been waiting too long. She was tall, pale, with stringy black hair that clung to her face like wet strips of seaweed. Her eyes were red, not crying red, like raw, chapped, overused. She never blinked. She walked me through the place while I tried not to gag from the chemical stink. Every wall was painted pale yellow, lined with construction paper, butterflies, and warped laminated photos of kids with wide, gummy grins. But the closer I looked, the less they looked right. Every photo had a strange blur near the mouth, like the skin didn't sit properly. Some of the smiles weren't symmetrical, one corner higher, teeth mismatched, like they'd been swapped. In one photo, I swear I saw a child's arm bending backwards at the elbow, too far back, almost wrapped around like a pretzel. But I blinked and it looked fine again. The woman, Karen, Shannon, whatever, kept moving like nothing was wrong. I asked her when they reopened. She just said, "We never closed. Not really." I asked about the kids. She said, "You'll see." I asked about the night shift. She paused and turned, her face peeling into a slow, wide stretch of what might have been a smile. They sleep, mostly. There were only 2 other staff members on the overnight schedule. I never learned their names. One of them was a man with burned, scarred skin along his neck, like melted wax over bone. The other was a woman who never looked at me, just shuffled from room to room, pressing her palms against the walls like she was listening for something. They didn't talk much. The man smelled like ammonia. The woman never blinked. No one ever blinked. No one. The children arrived one by one. No parents, no handoffs, no check-ins. I don't know where they came from. I turned to grab a clipboard at the desk. and when I turned back, there were 3 of them sitting quietly on the floor, staring at me like they'd been there all along. They were wrong. They looked like children at a glance, but something about the scale was off. Their limbs were too thin, but too long as well. One girl had a neck that stretched like a goose's when she tilted her head to the side, vertebrae cracking softly as she leaned. Another had eyes that didn't reflect light, just black holes that swallowed the fluorescent glow above. One little boy crawled, not walked, fast, hands and feet in tandem like a spider. They didn't speak, they didn't cry, they just watched and smiled, always smiling. It wasn't until nap time that I noticed the drawing. It was on the far wall of the nap room, behind a line of cots, a thick black crayon drawn with aggressive force. A door. A tall, thin door with no knob, crooked at the top, as if the ceiling had caved in just to make room for it. There were no other drawings in the room, no crayons left out, nothing in their hands, but I turned to tuck in one of the kids. He'd stopped breathing for a moment. I thought he was dead, and when I turned back, the door was there. It looked wet. The lines of the crayons gleamed like fresh oil, and when I got closer, I realized the crayon wasn't black at all. It was dark red, flaky, clotted in spots, like it had been drawn in something thicker than wax. The little girl on the nearest cot whispered something without opening her eyes. She didn't speak it. It was more like it crawled into my head. That's the cold room. We don't go there. I asked the others about it, but they acted like it wasn't there. One of them looked directly at it, nodded, and said, "That wall's always been clean," while the red smear pulsed slightly under the light. That night, I sat in the break room, eyes locked on the hallway cam feed, watching the nap room. The kids didn't move, not even to breathe. And just before 3 a.m., I watched one of them stand up, walk to the wall, and press his palm into the drawing. The door bulged like paper over something that wanted out. And then, just for a second, I saw it open. Not swing, not slide. It split. Like skin splitting under a knife. A soft rip, a thin, moist slit down the middle. No hinges, just tearing. There was something behind it. Something deep and moving. I couldn't see the shape, just shimmering black wetness and the smell of iron and rot flooding through the screen. I blinked. The kid was back in his cot. The door was gone. And when I walked to the nap room in the morning, after the kids had all vanished, the wall was sticky. Oh, and the floor smelled like... how can I put this? Teeth? I decided to go back that night. Something in that door knows me, and I think it's been waiting. I'm going to continue writing in my journal here. Chapter 2. One of the kids drew a door that shouldn't exist. I didn't sleep after the first shift. I sat on the floor of my apartment with the lights on and the blinds open, watching the night bleed into morning like a wound that wouldn't clot. My hands reeked of the nap room, of dust and bleach and something faintly sweet, like decomposing fruit left in a car trunk under the sun. My fingernails were dark. I scraped them clean with a key and found red under them. I hadn't touched anything red. Had I? I went back the next night. I wish I could tell you why. Maybe it was the money. Maybe I wanted to prove I hadn't seen what I thought I saw. Maybe I was just too scared of being broke to care if something chewed my face off in a room full of children that smiled too much. The building was darker than before too. The outside floodlights were off. Just a dull green exit glow flickered above the glass double doors. Inside, the hallway lights buzzed like flies caught in a light trap. One of them was strobing softly, but enough to make my stomach twist. They were already waiting. 8 kids this time, sitting in the lobby, silent, watching. One of them had a face covered in marker, big loops and spirals drawn into the skin, almost like they were trying to rearrange their features. Another sat curled in a ball, but his knees didn't just touch his chest, they pushed through it, like his ribs were made of rubber bands instead of bone. A girl sat by herself in the reading corner, slowly turning the pages of a book that was blank. Every few seconds, she would laugh, a dry, rattling wheeze like air through a broken whistle. The wall where the door had been, it was clean. Too clean. Cleaner than anything else in the building. The yellow paint was fresh, thick enough to leave tiny ridges where the roller passed, but there were no painter's supplies, no scent of latex or turpentine, just a faint copper tang that made the hairs in my nose burn. There was a ripple in the paint, a soft bulge like a bubble under wallpaper. I ran my fingers across it. The surface was dry, but underneath it was warm, beating, maybe, like a heartbeat behind the drywall. That's when I noticed it. The girl with the marker face had been drawing something new. It wasn't a door this time. It was a staircase, crude black lines descending in a spiral, narrowing until it disappeared into a jagged scribble at the bottom. She'd drawn it on her own arm, line by line, then peeled a strip of paper from the wall and started drawing the same staircase again in perfect, obsessive detail. She didn't look at me, just muttered, voice sticky with saliva and breath that smelled like pennies left in milk. "He's under the stairs now," she said, and I didn't ask who. She wouldn't have answered anyway. Around 2:15 a.m., the building changed. Not visually, not at first. It was sound, you see, a thickening silence, like the walls had stopped reflecting noise. I could still hear my own breath, but it didn't feel like it belonged to me. It echoed differently, shorter, muffled, like I was hearing myself inside a rubber suit filled with soup. I turned the corner towards the nap room and froze. There were footprints on the floor. Tiny, barefoot tracks, damp, smeared. Red and black, the prints didn't lead from the front door. They led out of the nap room. I followed. They turned once, twice, then stopped just in front of the supply closet. I reached for the handle. It was warm. Too warm. The metal burned cold into my palm, but the feeling was warm, internal, like fever, sweat down my spine. I opened it. The closet had no shelves anymore, just a dark, descending tunnel of exposed rebar and rotten wood slats. It smelled like wet towels left in a sealed trunk. I felt something shift inside me, like a memory trying to surface that didn't belong to me. From inside the tunnel, I heard breathing. Not human breathing. It was sloppy, gargling, like a bag of meat trying to suck air through a slit. And then a whisper. Not words. Wet syllables too close to meaning. My stomach convulsed. I shut the door. When I turned around, all 8 children were standing in the hallway. No noise, no footsteps. They stared at the closet door, smiles stretched thin. The girl with the spiral-drawn skin reached into her pocket and pulled out a crayon, black again. She walked to the wall beside the closet and pressed the crayon into the paint. With brutal pressure, she drew a rectangle, sharp corners, no knob, one vertical line down the middle. Then she whispered something, voice barely moving her lips. "Now you can see it too." The wall rippled. The rectangle she drew began to sink into the drywall, like gravity itself was being rewritten. The lines became grooves, the grooves became cracks, and then, with a sickening wet pop, the wall split open. It wasn't drywall inside. It was skin. Pale, wet, pulsating tissue, lined with ruptured blood vessels and clusters of tiny blinking eyes. At the threshold just inside the slit, teeth. Human teeth growing sideways like barnacles, wet with saliva and some kind of clear mucus. They weren't arranged in any kind of jaw, just embedded like fossils in a pulsating membrane. The girl stepped forward and leaned in. Not through, just close enough to let the thing breathe her in. I heard the tissue crackle, like it was smiling back. The others turned to look at me, and in that moment I remembered something I shouldn't. I remembered a staircase, cold stone, handprint in the dust, a tiny voice whispering for help in a tongue I didn't speak, but still understood. I remembered a door just like this one, and a man begging me not to open it, and I remember opening it anyway. Edit. I found something in the hallway this morning, a drawing of me, smiling, standing in front of the door, with something behind me, dragging its teeth down my spine. I think I need to go back down the stairs. Chapter 3. I walked through the wall today. It shouldn't have let me in. I didn't decide to go back. I just was there again. I don't even remember leaving my apartment. One minute I was staring at the drawing they left me, my own eyes scraped in with ragged circles, mouth stretched into a line of black crayon teeth, and the next I was standing in the daycare hallway, shoes damp, something cold trickling down the back of my neck. It was 2:42 a.m., and the wall had already opened for me. No one else was around. Not the kids, not the other staff, no flickering cameras or blinking lights. The hallway was wrapped in a thick, syrupy dark that didn't quite cover everything. It revealed things instead, silhouettes and stains and outlines in negative light. The door in the wall pulsed open like a wound breathing in reverse, slit wide, throbbing gently. Dampness dripped from its ragged edges, pooling on the tile like afterbirth. It was waiting. I stepped forward. The moment I crossed the threshold, the temperature plummeted. My breath didn't fog, it just vanished, sucked into the thick, wet air ahead. My shoes hit the floor instead with a squelch, not a step. The textures beneath me wasn't tile anymore, it was meat, veined, lumpy flesh that rippled under my weight. The hallway beyond wasn't built, it had been grown. Walls of yellowish tissue convulsed softly, slick with strings of mucus film that stretched and snapped with each breath I took. Thin, wiry hairs quivered in the ceiling like antennae, reacting to my presence. One of them dipped low enough to brush against my forehead. It was warm. So warm, like a dog's tongue panting against bone. Every few feet I passed shapes buried in the walls, not full bodies, just fragments. A hand here, part of a child's face there, cheeks stitched to muscle, lips moving silently under stretched, translucent skin. One had teeth growing out of the eyes. They watched me anyway. At the end of the hallway was the staircase, just like the girl had drawn. It spiraled down, lined with exposed ribs instead of banisters, vertebrae rising like fence posts along each side. There was no light, but I could see everything, like the darkness had given up on hiding what waited below. I took the first step. The bones groaned beneath me. Something moved in the walls. I didn't look. After the fifth step, I noticed the air was buzzing. Not a hum, not electricity. Flies. Yes, flies. They poured upward in clusters, wings crusted with black ichor, crawling from the cracks in the stairs. One landed on my cheek, its legs were barbed, and it whispered into my ear. Not a sound, a feeling, something old, something cold, something familiar. And I kept going. At the bottom was the basement, but not a basement made by people. The floor was a pit of discards, old, wet toys coated in a thick white film, Dolls missing eyes, stuffed bears with their limbs reversed, foam blocks gnawed into pulp. The walls were stacked high with filing cabinets, but not metal ones. These were made of hardened cartilage, knobby and soft, veins still twitching beneath the surface, pumping God knows what in a place where God doesn't exist. I opened one. Inside was a file folder, my name on it, handwritten. Neat, actually, almost loving. Inside, pages, drawings, crayon sketches of my face over and over, distorted further with each one. In some, my skin was gone, in others, I had too many teeth. One showed me kneeling before the slit in the wall, arms open, a black thing rising from the door and sliding down into me like a parasite choosing its skin. I flipped the page. There was a photo. Black and white, yellowed with age. The children were standing in a group, 6 of them smiling. And there I was in the center. Much younger, same face. But my eyes were hollow. 2 perfect round holes. Empty. The caption on the back read, Test Group 13, Subject Reintroduction Cycle, Year 1976. I dropped the folder. My fingers were soaked. Not in sweat. Milk. Thick, spoiled, curdled milk, seeping from the walls, dripping from the ceiling. My skin bubbled where it touched me, tiny boils rising, bursting with little black worms that wiggled into the meat of my arm before I could swat them off. I screamed, but the sound didn't leave my throat. Something moved behind me, slow, wet, pulling itself forward with too many limbs. I turned just enough to see part of it, not all of it, just enough of it. A mass of bone and tongue and fingernails growing out of itself. It had faces, so many faces embedded in the folds. Some were smiling, some were still screaming. It wore a child's backpack stretched tight around its central mass. The name tag on it read, Jason, age 4. Its eyes opened, dozens, maybe hundreds, all the same. All mine. I ran, back up the stairs, through the pulsing hall. The meat beneath my feet grabbed at me, veins curling like tentacles, trying to wrap around my ankles. One pierced the sole of my shoe and sank into my heel. My vision pulsed red, blood filled my mouth. But I got out. I don't know how. One moment I was inside it, and the next I was in the lobby again, on my back, eyes open, lungs screaming. It was 3:13 a.m. The slit in the wall was gone. The kids were back, sitting quietly, watching. The girl with the spiral-marked skin smiled without blinking and whispered so quiet, I barely heard it. You went home. Edit. My heel's infected. Something's moving under the skin. I can feel it curling every time I blink. I think it remembers the stairs. I'll keep on writing. It's the only way to make sense of this. Chapter 4. The kids don't age, and they remember me from before I was born. I can't feel my left foot anymore. I peeled the sock off this morning and saw it, a lump, just beneath the skin near my heel, pulsing. It shifts when I press on it, slides across the arc of my foot like a rat beneath linoleum. It leaves a trail under the skin, raised, pink, veiny. It stretches like something trying to hatch. I told myself I'd go to the ER. Instead, I went back to the daycare. Ugh, why? It didn't surprise me this time, though. Not the lights flickering behind me when I walked in, not the door locking itself, not the hum in the walls that rose and fell like breath. Not even the kids waiting for me in perfect silence. The same kids in the same clothes with the same expressions. Except now, there were 10. I counted 3 times. They never aged, never changed. But I swear to God, they all remembered more than I did. The little boy with the spider crawl posture handed me something wrapped in a wet napkin. I didn't want to open it, but I opened it anyway. A photo. Me again. This time older. Now, standing in front of the daycare, smiling, arm around a woman I'd never seen before, who looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same bone structure. Her name was scrawled in shaky ink on the back. Subject 13C Nurse Clone Variant. Self-pairing test. There was a second photo behind it, much older, black and white. A newspaper clipping. Headline says, 3 children missing after overnight stay at local daycare. No one came to pick them up, says owner, 1974. The picture was grainy. You could barely make out the faces, but one of them, the tallest, was wearing my hoodie. I ran to the supply closet. It was open now. Not a tunnel this time, just stairs. Rusty, spiral, covered in a slick black moss that left trails across the steps like slugs in heat. Every railing was wrapped in something I didn't want to touch, something that moved with me as I walked, twitching subtly like veins learning my rhythm. I couldn't stop. My foot ached. The thing inside it was pacing me. At the bottom, a door, not a slit, not a drawing, a real door this time. Old wood, metal latch, hinges made from what looked like spine, and burned into the grain was a phrase. Memory Reclamation, Cycle 6. I opened it. Inside was a playroom, but not like upstairs. This one was ancient. Toys from decades ago, metal cars, torn plush bears with glass eyes, colouring books filled with images of screaming adults and bleeding skies. There were no windows, no lights, just drawings covering every wall, thousands of them. Crayon, pencil, blood, children's scribbles at first, doors and stairs, and big 2 things in dark rooms. But deeper in, the drawings got more detailed, more adult. Anatomical sketches, diagrams, instructions, a cross-section of the human skull labelled in a child's handwriting style, a fetal diagram only the fetus was smiling and had too many fingers, and one page showed me, on an operating table, ribs peeled open, something inside me being fed into a jar. And below that, in neat red crayon, you said yes this time. More and more confusing. In the far corner, something moved. A child sat with its back to me, drawing. I don't know how I recognized her, but I did. She was me. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. She was me. Maybe 7 years old, face slack, mouth open, hair matted and wet like she'd been pulled out of a lake. She turned her head too far, all the way around. Her eyes were the colour of grey milk. Veins ran across the whites like cracks in porcelain, and she whispered in my own voice, "It was supposed to be just once, but you kept asking questions." The room changed, or maybe my memory came back. The drawings on the wall rearranged themselves, flipping like paper in a wind tunnel, clinging to the walls, the ceiling, and my skin. I saw flashes. Me on the first day shaking the supervisor's hand, only I was older, bald, covered in bandages. Me again holding a clipboard speaking to a glass wall full of blinking children, all smiling. And lastly me pushing a body, my body, into the slit in the wall. Not a door, a womb. I turned, staggered out of the door, but the stairs were gone. Only hallway now, lined with mirrors. I looked into the first. Not my face. It was the clone. 13C. She smiled, then opened her mouth. Inside were no teeth, just tiny fingers all flexing in unison. They waved at me. The second mirror, I was a child again, staring, not blinking, and behind me a mass of meat and cloth stitched into a child's shape stood with its head tilted like a broken puppet. The third mirror, nothing, but I felt something touch my back. I ran until the mirrors were gone, until the hall twisted back into the lobby. The kids were there, still smiling. The little girl with the crayon skin tilted her head and said, "Wait, no. I didn't hear anything. I felt her say, 'We drew you again. This time we got the insides right.'" She handed me a drawing. It was me, lying in the nap room, stomach open, a thing crawling out of my gut, dripping milk and blood, dragging cords of flesh behind it. The label? Ready. Edit. I woke up with blood in my sheets. I think I passed something in the night. It looked like a tooth, but it had a root and a tongue. It crawled back under the bed. I didn't stop it. Chapter 5. The basement isn't under the daycare anymore. It's under my skin. It started with the sounds in the walls. My apartment, cheap, cracked drywall, warped baseboards, and vents that smelled like old cigarettes started to breathe. I could hear it late at night. The same sound I heard on the monitor in the nap room. That low, slimy suckling, like something with too many mouths, nursing on something dry. A thick wetness like meat against glass. Then the whispering. Not words, just moods. Fear, hunger, recognition. The mirror in my bathroom is wrong now. When I look into it, I see the nap room behind me. Not my reflection. Just rows of tiny cots with heavy blankets and children underneath. Unmoving, not sleeping, waiting. Last night I found the first hole. Right in the middle of my living room wall. No cracks, no construction, just a smooth organic opening where drywall used to be. Circular, rimmed with soft flesh, like the edge of an eyelid. It wasn't bleeding, but it was weeping. Thick fluid, milky and sour. It smelled exactly like the basement, like iron, milk and old plastic. I pressed my head to the edge and it flinched. Then it opened wider, and I heard something inside my walls breathe. It said nothing, but it knew me. I started coughing up things. Not blood, not at first. Paper. I coughed up a drawing of all things. Crayon, wrinkled, wet. Me again, kneeling in front of one of the kids, my jaw unhinged, stretching down to the floor like a melted rubber mask. My tongue was long, coiled, reaching toward the child's face. In the drawing, the child was smiling. Their eyes were missing. At the bottom in red, 13A infiltration body / memory recovered skin host. I ran to the bathroom. I tried to claw my tongue out. All I pulled out was more paper. There are more holes now, in the floor, in the closet, under the bed. One opened behind my fridge. I didn't hear it at first, just the heavy, wet breathing leaking through the motor's hum, but I looked, and it was there. A long corridor of flesh and bone leading down, lit by pulsing blue veins that cast shadows across tiny boot prints stamped in the meat. I reached in and pulled something out. A shoe. Size 10.5. My brand, my wear pattern. Inside was a note. Slimy, curled like a tongue. You walked out once. You don't get to twice. That night I dreamed of the original daycare. I say dream, but I woke up with mulch and glass under my fingernails. In the dream I stood in a crater. A pit of bones and rotting toys. Rain fell, but the sky above was the ceiling, tiled and buzzing with lights. Around the pit were hundreds of doors, all drawn, all breathing softly, all open just a little. The children stood in a circle, holding hands. Their eyes glowed like old CRTs, blue, white, and too deep. In the center, something rose. I want to say it had a shape, but it didn't. Not really. It was made of flesh, yes. And eyes, yes. But it moved like memory. Shifting through form like it was trying to settle on the one I'd fear the most. It tried my father, then my old therapist, then me. But skinned, smiling fingers wet with milk and blood. It spoke through all mouths at once, not aloud, but inside me. You said yes 6 times, 6 doors, 6 meals. This skin was always yours. You only had to remember. When I woke up, my heel was split. I don't mean injured, I mean open. A hole now, ringed with soft pink ridges. Inside was light, a faint blue glow, like the veins in the daycare wall. I pressed a mirror to it. I saw the stairs, not the ones from the closet. These were older, covered in footprints. Mine, again and again, leading deeper, and something else is inside now, crawling upward. I tried cutting it out. I wrapped a belt around my ankle, sterilized a steak knife, and started slicing. I didn't bleed. What came out was drawings. Dozens of them. Curled, wet, pulsing, they slid out like slugs. Each one was a moment, a memory I didn't know I'd lost. Me, standing in a surgical room wearing a scrub suit and holding a child's severed head like a bouquet. Me drawing the first door onto the daycare wall, as other versions of me watched. Me kneeling, armed outstretched, and something enormous slithered down into my mouth. The last drawing was blank except for one word in the center, thick black crayon, written hatched. I haven't left the apartment in days. I don't think I can. Every time I open a door, I find another hallway, a corridor of flesh, of vents that breathe, of toys that cry softly when I pass. The walls are closing in, and last night I looked in the mirror and finally saw my eyes. Not mine anymore. They were glass. Tiny, black, bead-like, just like the girl with the spiral skin. Something else is looking out of them now, and it remembers everything. Edit. The last drawing I pulled from my leg was of you. Reading this, behind you is the door. It's drawn already. I can see it opening. Don't look. If it finds you, run. But don't run far. It's inside you too. You just forgot. I'll continue to write. If you ever see a kid drawing a door, run. It doesn't matter anymore. Whether the room is dark or not, I still see the same things. Veins in the walls, holes that breathe, the pale shimmer of old teeth beneath the drywall. When I close my eyes, I see the nap room, but not like before. Not empty, not quiet, full of children, yes, but also of remnants. The parts that didn't grow right, leftovers from other cycles, things that walked in wearing my skin but never made it back up the stairs. They don't talk, they hum, the same pitch, constant, like a tuning fork buried in my spine. The sound is louder now. The final hole opened in my chest, right beneath the sternum. I felt the skin pulled tight for days, growing thin and translucent like egg membrane. Last night it split open without pain, like it had been waiting for the right moment. I watched it in the mirror. From inside the hole, fingers reached out. Tiny, delicate, child-sized, coated in amniotic fluid the color of ash. They didn't grab me, just tapped gently, like a knock on the inside of a coffin. I vomited blood and drawings for 4 hours. They're all on the floor now, twitching softly, every one of them of the same scene. The daycare, the basement, the original room, and me, smiling, holding the last door open. I remember now everything. It wasn't just a job. It wasn't just bad luck. I made the doors. Years ago, maybe lifetimes, I built this place. Or at least the version of me that came before did. We opened the first wall not to let something in, but to let something out. We made a deal. It gave us life, endless copies, new skins, reboots. It let us leave for a while, walk among others, forget. But every cycle we come back, every time one of us remembers the stairs, the door hatches. The kids aren't kids, they're prototypes, shells, Test vessels. Some work, most don't. The ones that do, they go out into the world, silent and smiling, like me. I was the first to get out, and now I'm the last to remember. They sent me back this time as a test. See if the guilt would stick, if a memory could infect itself, fester, bleed back into the surface. It worked. I'm bleeding the truth now. I'm what hatches when it works. There's one final drawing. It was inside my mouth this morning, folded, soggy. I nearly choked on it, but I opened it. This time, it's you. Not a sketch, not stylized, it's detailed, realistic. The artist knew your posture, your screen, your hands, the reflection in your pupils. Behind you, there is that wall, and on that wall a child has just finished drawing a door. Not with a crayon, with blood. You're turning toward it. You're smiling. My final edit. I've served my cycle. It's your turn now. Don't bother running. The stairs are already under your feet. All it takes is one memory, one slip, one child's drawing on the wrong wall. Welcome back. And that's where we'll leave it for now. The crayons are broken, the wall's gone still, but if you're quiet enough tonight, you just might hear the soft scratch of another door being drawn, somewhere close. What would you do if a child handed you a picture of a place you've never been, but remember? Would you hang it on your fridge, or would you run? If this story twisted your brain, chilled your bones, or made you glance at your hallway just a little too long, please consider leaving a review on iTunes, or subscribing to the platform that you're on. It keeps the lights flickering in all the right places. And if you want to support the show, visit patreon.com/SFGT and become part of the strange and loyal crew who help me feed the story machine. You can also drop a tip through the link in the show notes if you're feeling particularly brave or generous. And I always love reading the commentary, or comments rather, for each episode. Thank you all for listening, and thank you for remembering. Now, I also want to take this chance and opportunity to thank all of my Patreon supporters. First up is my Ode Night Tea Titan, Matto Star. Some supporters shine, others guide. And then there's Matto Star, who brings a full thermos of calm care and cosmic generosity into a world where walls breathe and children's drawings open mouths with teeth in the hinges. If this story were a real place, and let's face it, parts of it probably are, Matto would be the one gently reminding the staff that maybe nap time shouldn't involve sentient doors. You'd volunteer to mop the milk off the flesh stairs, not because you have to, but because you can't stand messes left behind by eldritch toddlers. Matto, your compassion holds this twisted little world together, and your support helps me keep making it worse in the best possible way. You are the backbone of this haunted daycare and the smile in the deepest dark. Thank you, you living legend, from the bottom of my twisted little heart. Have a fantastic week ahead of you, legend, and cheers for being downright amazing. Thanks, Matto, my wonderful friend. And now I want to thank my White Tea Warlords. First up is Lesosaurus Rex. If the entity beneath the daycare ever tried lunging out of the wall mid-squat, you'd catch it mid-air and powerbomb it back into the dimension it slithered from. You're the one doing chin-ups from the meat rib banister and treating the bone staircase like your personal stairmaster. The horror doesn't chase you. It spots your gains and quietly excuses itself. Dudio, have a kick-ass gym session and an even more epic week ahead. Thank you as always, you living legend. Cheers, Leza, for your amazing support and friendship. Maya, your cats have been drawing doors into other realities for years. You just assumed it was part of their enrichment. When the walls begin to whisper, you didn't panic. You simply turned the volume down and told Mr. Whiskers to stop summoning entities before dinner. You don't survive the horror, Maya. You roll your eyes at it, feed it tuna, and make it share the sofa. Thank you so much, Maya, for your friendship support, and I hope you have a brilliant week ahead as well. Thank you. And my last white tea warlord, Sangeetha. You didn't need to listen to today's story. You already dreamed it, backward, in a language older than ink. When others panic at the sound of scribbling on the walls, you calmly open your notebook and say, "We're right on schedule." If the daycare has a prophecy scrawled in milk and teeth beneath the tiles, you wrote it. Twice. Sangeetha, have a kick-butt week ahead. Thank you for your friendship, your support, and being a marvelous seer for the podcast. Thank you, mate. And now I want to thank my Earl Grey enforcers, the frontline warriors that literally attack boredom by the throat. I'm lucky to have Rhonda Ray, Seductive Smiles, Paige Kramer, Divided by Zero, Juicebox Andy, Just Heather, Peter Raffaele, and Chad Warren. Thank you all for being amazing, and a huge thank you to all of you that support the podcast. I am so grateful. This has been Stories, Fables, Ghostly Tales, and I've been your tale teller, signing off before another wall starts whispering at me. Until next time, stay curious, stay spooky, and if a child ever looks at you and says, "You were here before," you were. Have a great week, but I guess you already know that. Bye.
Thanks for listening, legends. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. And a huge shout out to Matto Star, Lezosaurus, Maya, and Sangeetha. Have a great week.